Hello everyone, may love and light be with you. I finally decided to share my second home birth video or story in a video. And it took me a little bit of time because it's something that is just really special to me. But I decided that it is definitely something that I want to share with the world. And so my intention in making this video and in sharing this story is to basically share that home birth is totally something that you can do if you're somebody who is interested in that. And I just want to sort of help to normalize home birth. A lot of times I felt like I was in situations where I just didn't want to even share with people that I was planning to have a home birth because it's something that, you know, a lot of people look at as like you're being irresponsible or you're doing something that's dangerous for you and your baby. But birth is something that's totally normal, and like women have had birth, like have given birth for thousands of years in the privacy of their own homes. And I totally also understand that there are times where we do need to have like medical support and things like that. But there's definitely ways to be able to have your baby at home in a safe way. And so this is the second time that I've had a home birth. My oldest child is 4 years old, so I had a home birth then. And then our daughter, Asia Linda, was born on October 21st, 2020. And so she was our second home birth baby, and she was actually born in water, so we had a water birth for her. And so I'm very excited to share this with you. And again, it's something that so special and dear to my heart. So I hope that you're able to receive it with that sacredness as well. So like I mentioned, Asia was born on October 21st of 2020, and that was about, I think, 3 days after our estimated due date. So she was born on a Wednesday, and so I guess the story sort of starts on Tuesday morning, the day before she was born. So I woke up and I had noticed a little bit of spotting when I went to the bathroom. And for some people that might be a little bit TMI, but it's part of the story and it's part of birth. So and then that same day we had our weekly appointment with our midwife. And so we went to see her, and just kind of, I told her like, oh, you know, I saw this, and she was like, yeah, that could be, you know, like the start of your body preparing for labor and birth. And of course, for me, I want to meet my baby. So I'm like, okay, I wonder when this is gonna happen, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, so she just said, you know, it could be your body preparing, and that could be something that goes on for quite some time. And it could also be that, you know, you could have the baby soon. But it just, you know, it depends on the body and how things are supposed to happen. And so we went home, and I think by then it was like midday Tuesday. And so by then I had been doing vaginal steaming starting at 38 weeks in the pregnancy. So it's safe to start steaming once you have reached 38 weeks in pregnancy, because you're past the safety zone, I guess, of when you could deliver, which is usually considered 36 weeks. So anyways, I started steaming actually around 39 weeks. I would just do like a little steam session at night, just to help my body relax and to really support my body for the work that was going to come at some point. And so I came back home, and I think I had done I had just been trying to take it easy that day, you know, just in case anything did progress. And so I think by that evening, I thought, oh, let me just do a steam session and see how that supports my body, because I had been doing it previous to that as well. But it helped me to relax big time. Every time I steamed while I was pregnant, you know, of course, just at the end of the pregnancy, but every time I did that, I felt so relaxed. It felt like I would always tell my mom, and I told my husband this too, that I felt like I wanted to have like the steam with me all the time because it was just so soothing, especially to like the pelvis. Like somehow it was just really, really, really relaxing and soothing. So I did that somewhere that afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, I believe, and then I remember going to bed early because I was like, you know what, if something goes on, I want to make sure that I can try to have energy, and so I tried to go to bed early. So I went to bed, I think around like 9 or something like that, and so I remember having some surges, some feelings, some contractions start, and I think actually by then they were already sort of starting. Like throughout the day it was like little things I was noticing, but then around that time when I went to lay down was when it actually started to become much more active. And so I had this app on my phone where I was sort of like checking how long each one was. So I would just kind of like try to breathe and relax through them, and of course they weren't very intense yet. And so, but then as time went on, I remember looking at the time and it was like closer to 10 p.m. I think. And it was where the contractions were becoming much more intense. They were lasting a little longer and coming like close in time. And so the app was like, part of me is like, I probably shouldn't have been using that, and I should have just like let my body do its thing. But you know, there's also that part in you where you're like wanting to know how things are progressing. So anyways, the app was like, now is the time to get to your provider or whatever. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like wow, it's things are like moving forward. And so so I think by then somehow like at around that time it just got more intense, and so I was like, oh my gosh, this could be it. And I was hearing a lot that the second time around for a lot of people will just go by super quick and stuff like that. So by the time that this happened, where you know things were feeling kind of like this is the real deal, I was just like, oh my god, the baby could be coming like any minute, like the baby could be coming now kind of thing. And so then I'm still laying in bed, so I got up and I was like, let me go to the bathroom. And I think I was like gonna go into the bathtub or something like that. When I got up, I had told my husband, like, you know what, it seems like it's kind of getting a little bit more intense. Let our midwife know and let my mom and dad know as well. So he was kind of like contacting them, and I went into the bathroom, and again, like this realization of like, oh my gosh, like this could actually be happening. It hit me like so hard to the point that I started to actually panic, where it felt like I was having like the intensity of the contractions, but I was also like, oh my gosh, I'm about to just like pass out. Like I just was like, I almost was like freaking out basically. I was like, oh my God, the baby's gonna come soon. And it just like, the reality just sort of like hit me hard. And when I had that sort of like panicky moment, it seemed like everything slowed down. So, but by then my parents had come by. Our midwife was just in communication with my husband still, and my parents came in, and you know, it just really slowed down a lot. Everything just slowed down. and yeah, that was, you know, obviously a little bit frustrating, because I was like, oh my gosh, that could have been it. And I totally freaked out, and now you know, I just kind of like went into my own head about it. And so throughout the night, then I was just trying to get as much sleep as possible. I ended up coming out of the bathtub. My parents were just kind of like in the living room trying to get some rest there. And I was just really, to be honest, I was really caught up just in my mind at that point. I was like, that could have been it. I could have had the baby by now if I was chill, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like I was just in my head about it, when really it wasn't the time. But I was just, you know, of course in my head. And I was like feeling bad that my parents came and now they're like sleeping on the floor in the living room, and I'm like in my head. And so finally I just like laid down and I'm like, you know what, what's gonna happen when it happens? This could be, you know, I could just have the baby like days from now, actually. Like everything was just kind of slowed down. But I was still having these sensations, and they were much more spread out now, a little bit less intense, but it was still sort of where I actually needed to be like focusing and like breathing through them, which was interesting. And so throughout the whole night, I was just trying to sleep. I was just trying to sleep in between each like surge or contraction, whatever you want to call it. And I was using frankincense essential oil, and it was so helpful. Somehow this was the same thing I did with during my first birth, because my mom had used this tip during her labors as well. And so she was like, you know what, just use this frankincense oil. So I was just smelling frankincense essential oil the first time, and then during the second time as well. And it seemed to really help me like center so that I could breathe through each contraction. And that was really like, it was really comforting. And I remember like I would fall asleep like after like it would kind of ease, and I would fall asleep, but I was still holding the essential oil bottle, and at one point I dropped it and it spilled all over my blanket. So like my blanket smelled like that for so long afterwards, which was actually really comforting for me. Somehow that smell, even until now, was just so comforting for me. But anyways, I was using that, and I was just kind of making it through the night, and trying to get as much rest as I could. And by the morning, I was like, okay, like, yeah, I'm trying to be patient, but when is this baby coming? Kind of thing. Like, so the day goes on, and I'm trying to eat, I'm trying to rest, like trying to eat little bits so that I have energy, but not eat too much, because my stomach was also kind of like doing its own processing. And so my husband was like just kind of there with me, because again, it was like when the surges came on, it was quite like intense, sort of, where I wasn't really able to speak through them, or at least I really wanted to just put all my energy into focusing. But at the same time, they were really spread out. It was like one every 10 minutes or something like that. So I think I used a homeopathy, and it seemed to kind of like move forward a little bit more. I also was just kind of like walking around the house, because so far to this point, I was really trying to just rest as much as I possibly could. And so finally at that point, I was like, you know what, let me walk around a little bit and just kind of like move a little bit. And it was, to be honest, again, it was like kind of a frustrating thing for me, because I felt like I wanted to rest and just surrender into everything, but at the same time, there's this part of you that's like eager for things to continue moving on. So I was just like, you know what, I need to not worry about that. But before I got to that point again, I also had my husband wrap a rebozo around my belly, and I was like on my hands and knees, and he was standing, and he would kind of like shake my belly, sort of like, not shake violently or anything, but it was just kind of like massaging my belly with this big large scarf or sheet, and so that really helped to kind of like, it just, I don't know, soothe. It just felt really relaxing, and it felt really good. And by that time, my parents had taken my son to their house, so that it was just me and my husband. We're just kind of like in this relaxation as much as possible. And so after that, I was like, you know what? Again, I just really have to let go. I can't be stressing myself out. I can't be pressuring myself, which I was really like in my head about. I was just kind of like, you know what? Like, I don't know, I was just pressuring myself a lot, just wanting things to move forward. And I had to really stop and tell myself, no, you gotta just surrender to this as much as possible. And little did I know that it was like the rest of the day still that I would need to practice that surrendering. So yeah, and throughout all of this, we were in contact with my midwife, but it wasn't really at a point where we needed her to actually be there, because it was just still kind of like early labor, sort of. So anyways, I ended up doing a steam session. So I did a little bit of steaming, and that seemed to actually help things move forward. So I remember doing the steam session, and then I think I went to lay down, and then it seemed that the contractions were starting to sort of like come come sooner. And that was really interesting. And so I ended up resting a bit and just trying to like work through everything and just remind myself to be like centered as much as possible. And then I ended up getting up to go to the bath, and by now it's probably like evening time on Wednesday. I want to say probably like it was about to get dark when I went to the bathtub, I think, or it may have already gotten dark, something like that. So it had to be probably past, like, it was probably around like 5 or 6 in the evening, something like that. And so by then it was like, whoa, these are intense. Like I've gotta if I didn't completely focus and try to just breathe through each of these like sensations and like the surges, I felt like if I didn't focus on that, then I probably would have just like kind of like gotten into this bad funk where it would have just been like so intense, where it feels like it's like unmanageable or just like too much or whatever, you know. But thankfully I was able to really center each time one of the surges came on. And that's the blessing also of labor, is that you have breaks. So at least there's like a little bit of a relief where you can be like, okay, let me have a sip of water, or oh, I need you to press on my back, or I need you to hold my hand, or, you know, just a little moment to kind of reset before the next one comes on. It's such a blessing. Like I have shivers thinking about it. It's such a mercy for it to be that way, like for us to actually have like little tiny breaks between each intensity. So I was just kind of like making my way through, and God bless my husband. He was just there with me and just incredibly patient, and just like so supportive. He was just like there holding my hand, and I was just having like I was just sitting in the hot water, which really was very comforting as well. And you know, we have that frankincense essential oil bottle like in my nose, and yeah, it was just sort of like working through as much as possible. And it felt like each surge was so intense. It just felt like, you know, again, I had to be completely focused on them. But at some point I just started crying, because I was just like, this is hard. Like persevering through each of these is just hard. Like it just is difficult. And so, but yeah, I just knew that, you know, there is no other way. You just got to keep on breathing through. You just got to keep going. But again, I think I had another moment at that point where I was just like, and by now it's probably like 7 p.m. or something like that. And so I was like, you know what? It was another moment of just being like, I have to just surrender to this. Like no pressuring, no holding, just let go and breathe and surrender as much as I possibly can. And I was just at that point too, you know, before coming to that realization again, I was just crying, and my husband was like, you know what, it's okay, just relax, like everything is okay, it's all right. And I'm just like, you know, crying and stuff like that. But thankfully I came to that realization, and I'm like, okay, just gotta stay focused as much as possible. And I think my husband was trying to kind of like keep an eye on like the timing of things and how close together everything was, so that he could update our midwife. And so at some point she came, and so by then I'm thinking it was probably like maybe I'm not really quite sure, but I think it was like 7 p.m., something like that. I think my mom and dad came around that time too, and I'm still in the bathtub in the warm water, and my mom was like there trying to, because I always have this thing, the same thing happened with my son, with my first birth. was where like my body needed to be in warmth, but my face needed to be cold. And oh, as I'm telling this story, I'm like, oh, feeling it. I'm feeling it. And remembering what it felt like. But I just, yeah, I needed to have like cold towels on my face and my shoulders, and my body needed to be in that warmth. So my mom was like doing that for me, and then she would switch, and my dad would come in and hold my hand, and like, you know, just so that Ibrahim could have a little bit of a break. So it was kind of like, you know, they were all helping me and supporting me, which was just so touching. And so, you know, you guys might be also wondering, like, what about my older son? So all throughout the day, he was with my parents and my siblings. And then once my parents came, because I also, you know, thinking about birth and labor before it actually was happening, I would talk to my family and say, like, I did want our son to sort of be there. He's very interested in like bodies and systems and anatomy and things like that. So I wasn't really I was sure that he would be interested in kind of like being part of it, but I wasn't sure about like the actual birth part and him being around. I was just kind of gonna go with the flow. But it was so nice because my parents came and my siblings actually came. 4 of my younger siblings, I have 5 younger siblings, 4 of them were able to come and just kind of like be at the house. But I think my sisters came and sort of like peeked in a few times, and they were like just helping me to relax a bit. And that was, you know, for some people I feel like that would be an interruption, but for me I felt like it was like I was just in such a focused point that it was fine. And I also was very happy that that happened, because I wanted my sisters to sort of witness that. Like I wanted them to witness labor and as much as possible, because I had the pleasure of at the time, I don't know if I was really into it, but it was special for me to actually be able to be at the births of my siblings as well. And so I wanted that for them. I wanted them to see, like, as young girls, I wanted them to see kind of like what that was like, at least a little bit, you know. So my son was there, and he would come in and be like, Mama, I'm asking God to make it easy for you. Is that the right thing to do? And I was just like, yeah, yes, you know, just trying to like speak to him, but also be like in the moment. And yeah, it was just so sweet. He was like in and out, and you know, I mentioned that my midwife had come, and she, oh my God, she came in with like such, like, just so much presence. Now I'm getting shivers again, like just so much peace. Like she just came in with so much like tenderness, I think is the word that I could use to describe it. But she like turned down the lights, and she was just sort of like, yeah, you're doing good, just like assuring me that everything was going well. And that was just wonderful. And then she kind of like was on the outside. I think she was kind of helping to get our room ready, and my husband, I think, and her were sort of getting the pool put together and things like that. So she was outside of the bathroom for a bit too. And then my parents were in there helping me and stuff like that. And so, and my son was just like, he was like so excited about the pool. And that was sort of another concern that was on my mind during labor, was that I didn't want him to feel left out, because he was just so excited. Like he's like, he loves water, he loves swimming, he loves everything to do with like ocean stuff and all this like water stuff. So the fact that we had a pool inside of our bedroom and Mama was gonna have our baby in there was like the craziest, like coolest thing for him. So I was like really concerned, like what if things go fast and he's not here? Oh my gosh, you know, my mind was just kind of like going into that stuff. And so that was another, you know, thing that I had to sort of like chillax about. But anyways, he was like in his like swimming trunks or some shorts or something. He's like, Mom, I'm gonna go in the pool. So he was just kind of like doing all that. And I think my parents at some point told my sister to take my siblings and like just take them back home along with my son. So everything just got really quiet, And then I had a point where I think my midwife, Linda, she was like, I think, you know, it might be a good idea to maybe try to move around a little bit. Because at that time I was in the bathtub for a long time, like a really long time. And so I was totally willing to just be like, you know what, let me try a different thing. Let me just try to move around a little bit. So I got out of there, went to the bathroom, went to the toilet or something like that. I just kind of like in between. And then at some point I came into the room, and I just loved that the setting, because by then it was night, it was dark, and we just had they had turned on a couple of our Himalayan salt lamps, so the lighting was just really relaxing, and yeah, it was just so nice. And so at that point it was like intense, and you know, I was in my planning, I was thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have this really like quiet, gentle, like hypnobirthing thing where I'm just gonna be like breathing this baby. I'm not gonna be pushing, you know, I had this like whole idea in my head about, you know, what I was wanting to do, I guess. I don't know. But you know, this labor was intense. Like, it was intense, and it was very similar to the first time around. It wasn't, you know, it was intense, but it was actually more intense than the first time around. And so so by this time I'm just kind of like trying to get through it. I'm getting a little bit louder in my breathing, where I'm just like, you know, like making sounds with it. And I didn't really do that the first time around either. And so I remember just being at a point where I was just kind of like squatting next to the bed, and I could tell that something was shifting, and I realized like, okay, I think there's a bit of like a holding that I'm doing, and I needed to just kind of like relax into the surges as much as possible. I was like, I can't, like, you know, because there's this intensity and you're trying to breathe through it, but at the same time you're like trying to be like, I don't want it to have, you know, it's kind of like, I don't want to be in this intensity, but I need to breathe through it. So it's like, it's kind of like a little bit of a battle. But then I was like, no, you know what, these surges are what's gonna bring the baby more, like down more. And so I was like thinking like, I need to do what I can to relax into it as much as possible. And I just remember thinking like, God is in control, and God is with me. Like, I could just feel that warmth, and I was like, each of these surges are coming from something, and for me it felt like each of these was an energy from God that was just bringing my baby closer and closer to me. So I remember thinking about that. I was at the edge of the bed, and I was just like thinking about that through each contraction. And another thing that was really on my mind at that time during each one was like, oh my God, like it was like shock, like, oh my God, women all over the world do this all the time. Like women do this. Oh my gosh, how do they do this? And how are we not like honoring moms, like incredibly honoring mothers, because they go through this. Like, that's what was in my head like over and over. I was just like, oh my God, when I'm done with this, I have to make sure that I do everything I can to honor mothers. That's what I was thinking about during the contractions. And so yeah, I was just like, you know what, let me try to soften into these things so that I can just get this going. And I think around that time is what would be considered like transition or something, where you're actually like, you know, this is about to happen kind of thing. So my midwife was like, you know what, the water's ready. Whenever you're ready to go into the pool, you can, whatever is comfortable for you. And around then, her midwife in training, I guess that's what you would call, who I love as well, she ended up coming around that time, and I think by then my siblings and my son had already left. So I got into the water, and by that time it was like super intense. So I'm like trying to be in the water, and then I think I stood up at some point, in the pool, and this was really beautiful. But I had this rebozo from my teacher, and so we had it like wrapped around my belly and then crisscrossed in my back, so that one side was going to the right, one side was going to the left, and I would have my dad and my husband pull as like when I was in the contraction. So they would pull on the rebozo, and it was just like giving me the like pressure that I needed. Somehow like my hips just needed pressure. And at that point, so my husband's pulling one side, my dad's pulling one side, my mom is like fanning my face with a fan, and I'm like, Mom, more. She's like fanning my face. And before that, they were like, my mom was like trying to press on my hips, but the rebozo came, it was so handy. So they were just pulling, my mom was fanning me. And then finally I got into like sort of like not a squat, but sort of like a one-legged lunge in the water. And each time a surge would come, I would just kind of like try to go down with that. And throughout all of this, I had never wanted to be checked. And my midwife, like I had spoke to her about that before, and she was like, yeah, that's totally fine. So throughout the whole time I was not checked. So there was like hardly any intervention. And I believe that is what our bodies need in that time. Like that's what we just need, to give the body the space to do what it needs to do, as long as everything is going well and everything is safe for the mom and the baby. And I felt so honored by that. Like, you know, I just loved having my midwife there, and with her, the presence that she brought. And I loved that she really just let me do my thing, you know? So she was like, you know what, it seems like your body might want to push, so if you need to do that, just kind of go with your body. And I was like, by then I was like, yeah, like I felt like I needed to push, but it was not silent. Let me tell you that. It was not silent. And with my first birth, I was like, I don't think I made much of a noise at all, but this time I was like lion came out. So I'm like, you know, making all these sounds like, raw, like just trying to breathe with it. Like I was just trying to make these like downward, like just like this, like, it wasn't like screaming. I wasn't like, ah, you know, losing control, but I was just kind of like making these sounds to kind of help bring everything downward. And I was like, you know, at that point there was none of that I'm not pushing kind of thing. I was like pushing with my body because it just felt like that's what I needed to do. And at some point my midwife was like, you know, try to put your hand there and see if you can feel your baby crowning. And I felt there, and I didn't feel anything. So I was like, oh man, like, oh, I've got some time to go. I've still got some work to do. And then, you know, a couple more surges happened, and I was just still trying to breathe, and I was kind of like pushing along with that. And then I think I could feel something at some point. I reached down again and I could feel something, and I wanted to catch the baby. That was what I really, really wanted. And honestly, as I'm saying that out loud, I feel like I still haven't processed the fact that I was able to catch the baby. Like, it's such a big thing. But anyways, I felt like I could feel something, but I was just kind of like, you know, I needed to hold myself up and stuff like that too. And so I was just kind of like, I felt, and then I was just kind of like trying to be in the moment and stuff. And then my midwife was like, can I try to feel? And it turned out that our daughter was actually, as she was coming out, her arm was coming out first. So when my midwife felt down there, the baby actually held onto her hand. and she was like thinking, like, what is this? Turns out it was her arm, and that was what was coming out first. And I think that was part of why it was like, I don't know, it felt like that was maybe part of the intensity and the amount of like pushing that went on. But anyways, she could feel her, and then I think maybe like one more surge, and she, like, her head was able to come out. And so, so yeah, she just came out into the water, and my midwife was like feel her there and just like bring her up. And so I felt her come out, and I brought her up, and oh my gosh, and keep in mind, we actually didn't know the gender of the baby. And so this part was really, really, really special. And my dream was for, you know, my mom and dad, and of course my husband, but my mom and dad and my siblings and my son to be there when we saw the gender of the baby. But of course I didn't know how that would happen, like logistically, because I didn't really want everyone to like be in the room while I'm actually having the baby, you know, so I wasn't sure how everything would work out. But somehow when the baby came out, so I lifted her up, and I'm like holding her. And I think at that point, my dad had sent a message to my sister to bring everybody back so that they could all be there. He's like, the baby's here, bring Ismail, that's our oldest son, and everybody come back, kind of thing, like the baby's here. And I'm so glad that he did that, because it was just like perfect. And so I'm like holding the baby, and all I could do was just say like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I was just saying thank you over and over and over. And later on, when I mentioned that to my husband, he was like, oh, I thought you were like saying thank you to our midwife. And of course, I'm super grateful to my midwife, but I was thanking God because this was such a big thing. And I had like, you know, I'm so into like trusting the body and all of that, but at the same time, somehow I had a lot of worries and concerns that were just like floating in my head, and I was always trying to just kind of like work past, but I was, you know, I was just concerned about different things. So to have the baby in my arms, to be on the other side of pregnancy, I was just so grateful. I was just so grateful. So I just kept saying, thank you, like over and over. I'm like holding the baby, saying thank you. And my husband was like right behind me. He was in the water with me. Yeah, so I'm like holding the baby, and until now I can still feel like her little head and her little booty in my hands. And I was just so grateful. And as I'm holding her, I feel the umbilical cord under there. And I'm like, oh, it's a boy. It's another boy. And I didn't say anything because, of course, our plan was for everybody, like for me to turn the baby over and for all of us to be able to see what the gender was. And so I'm like thinking, oh wow, it's a boy. So I didn't say anything. My siblings all come into the room, and they're all kind of lined up, and my son comes in, and I'm like, look, the baby's here, and then I'm like, well, let's see what the baby is. So we turn her over, and oh my God, it's a girl! And my husband was like, wow, like he was all of us were so excited, but I was like double thrilled because it was like a double surprise, basically, because I would have been so happy if it was a boy as well. Either way, I was going to be so happy. But the fact that I thought it was a boy, I was already like, oh, it's a boy. And then when we saw it, and we're, oh, it's a girl. Oh my God. It was like it was so beautiful. And I'm so grateful and just honored that it was able to go this way, especially thinking about the fact that I really wanted my siblings to be there. I wanted my son to be there, but I just didn't want them to be like in the room. It was like a whole thing. I wasn't sure how it would happen logistically, but it happened so beautifully. And they were all there, and they were like all standing like in the room. It was just so touching. So I kind of like held her for a little bit longer in the water, and then my husband got out, and then we kind of like wrapped the baby, and he by then the placenta was birthed as well, and then, you know, my husband was able to kind of like get the baby out for me, and then I went on to our bed, and we were able to just kind of like relax there for a while. And I always say this, but there is literally no relief like the relief that you feel after giving birth. There is just like, there's no feeling like that in the world. Like, I don't think, like, it's just such a relief, like, to be on the other side. And so I was just like, in that bliss, and just so grateful. And then our son was able to take part in cutting the umbilical cord, and all of this is just so intimate. It was just such an intimate thing, and that's part of why I wanted to share the story, was so that if this is something that you desire, then and if you're healthy and if your baby's healthy and everything's going well for your pregnancy, then why not consider this as an option? Like, it's just something that is it's special. So if you're into it, I just want you to feel supported, and like there's obviously the possibility that it's something that you could also do, if it's something that you want for yourself. But yeah, it was just so intimate, and yeah, so we just kind of like got cozy. Our midwife helped to clean everything up, which was just so sweet as well. And her like midwife in training who was with her, she was able to like bring the placenta and show it to me, and oh, it was like all of these little details coming together. It was just so incredible. And so my parents had left by then, and we just were able to kind of like settle into things. And yeah, so that was amazing. And I do want to share this part. It's a bit TMI, I'm sure, for some people, but it is something that was on my mind a lot before giving birth, and so I'm sure that a lot of other people will be thinking about this too. But for me, I was really concerned about tearing, of having any types of tears that I would need to be like to have stitches for and stuff like that. But thankfully everything was fine. I had like 2 small areas that would need to just heal on their own. But part of that, I really feel what was helpful in that, I feel like, is the steaming, and that's what my intention was in steaming, like at the end of the pregnancy and in labor, was I wanted it to try to help my tissues to be able to be like moisturized and to be supported in the ways that they need to, so that they can stretch with ease. And that was my hope. And so I was so thankful and so relieved when my midwife told me, like, there's 2 very minimal areas that will just need some healing on their own. And so that was such a blessing as well. But it was amazing. It was intense. It was so intense. Afterwards, after everything like settled down, I remember like staring at the wall and thinking, wow, that, like, I just witnessed my strength. I witnessed my own strength. And I had this like new like belief in myself, or yeah, I guess like I just felt like I believed in myself, and I felt that I was strong because of what I went through, and the intensity that I like persevered through. And I say this like with humility too. I'm not like, I was able to do this thing, na. I'm not trying to be that way at all. But I do feel like that is something that birth, like it's sort of like, any way that you birth your baby, you're strong, and it's amazing. Like, you grew a human in your body. You are so strong. And it's important for us as women to really let ourselves settle in that, and to feel that strength that we have within ourselves. And I think that, that's just really, really important. So I remember feeling like wow, I was able to persevere through that, and I was able to witness my own strength, and that was very powerful for me. That's the birth story. There's other details, like other like lessons and reflections that I might share in another video, but this was a whole thing, and I know this was a long video, so I'm really grateful to you for listening through it all. I'm so thankful that I have you to share this story with. It really means a lot to me, sharing this, and I was excited to share it, but I didn't realize how fun it would be for me to just say it all in so much detail. So thank you for being here and for watching, and yeah, I hope that you take care and that you are well. Thank you. Bye.